Mr. Pretty Tony, with a flashy collar and a body that glistens like honey. You know he's all about getting that money. And we're going to break it down for you. So grab a cup of chill as we sit back and go on the Vise with the FlyOlderGuy. And on the Vise, we have a size 14 curved hook. I'm going to pair that with a 3mm bead. Get that into the Vise. On the bobbin, I have some UTC 140 in a pink. So we're going to get that started right behind the bead head. Don't really worry too much about getting the bead head locked in place. We'll have plenty of material butted up against it in a minute. So you want to trim off the end of that tag and just wrap the thread down pretty much all the way down to the beginning of the real hook bend there and then back up. And I like to leave the thread right behind that hook point. I'm going to grab some of the metallic Mederia, my favorite material for the ribbing. It's just a little flashy thread-like material. You could use some skinny flash if you want, some crystal flash. So I'm going to tie that in right there at that point where I left the thread, and then wrap down just to cover it up and add a little bit of taper to the body. Bring the thread back up to that tie-in point and just trim off the tag end of that Mederia material. I will wrap just to cover that tag end, and again add a little bit more thread base just for a little bit of a taper on the body, and bring the thread back to that point just behind the hook point. Then we're going to take some of this hairline Lexi Flex leg and body material. It's a elastic body material. It's kind of flat, so it's not really like the round rib material. So I'm going to cut off one piece of that, and then with a pinch wrap tie that in right there at my tie-in point. A couple wraps just to make sure it's secure, and then wrap my way down again, all the way down. You know, it doesn't have to be touching wraps. We're going to wrap back over this with that rubber in a minute. Bring it back up, and I'm just going to trim off that tag end, pull it up a little bit so it'll get nice and close. And then just wrap up a little bit more. Build up a little bit of a taper up there, and then leave the thread on the bobbin cradle and start to wrap this rubber material. I started off just underneath the thread on the hook itself, and then bring it up with touching, if not overlapping wraps. You know, a good pace, slow and steady. When you get to this curve, very often it'll shift a little bit, and you can just adjust it. You can see it takes me a couple of tries to adjust it, and then I decide to just kind of overlap it. And I am going to build up a little bit of a bulbous kind of thorax here. So once I get up to the top, if you don't want to, you can leave it at this point. It's nice and smooth. But like I said, I want to make it look a little plump, very appetizing when it floats by. This is something I would probably use like a dropper, on a dry dropper. It's going to float in the center of the water column, not really drag the bottom too much. This isn't really meant to drop so fast. So after I've wrapped up a nice little mount on that thorax area, I'm just going to bring my thread back up, and we'll just tie off this flexy rubber leg and body material. A couple wraps in the back, give it 1-2 wraps in the front, and trim it off close. And then just a few more wraps to just cover up that little tag end of that rubber. We'll return the thread to the cradle and wrap the metallic Mederia. And again, just started off just underneath the base and on the hook, and then up onto the body itself with some nice tight wraps. I want to have a lot of little rib flash happening. So we get nice tight wraps, quite a few, 9, 10 wraps. Gonna get that bobbin off the cradle, shorten up the thread, and then just go around again. 2 wraps behind the material, and then wrap in front of the material, and trim out the material. Looks good, looking good. Trim it off the tag end, don't worry too much about it. We're gonna just wrap over it and build up a little bit of a collar. This 140 thread, bright color, make a nice collar here. So several good wraps, and we'll grab the whip finish tool and we'll give it a nice whip finish, a little bit of like a back to the front whip finish on the collar, just so it doesn't get too crazy. It does slip a little bit, but then it finds its way back. Tighten it up, give it a trim, looking pretty good. And then we're going to grab our UV. It's a thin UV finish. I like to start off on the bottom, just a nice drop and a half, and I'm spreading that around. Just using the bottle dispenser itself, just the tip there. Spread it around. Don't have to go too fancy. You can grab your bodkin if you want to. And you can see the bottom drip looks a little bit thick, like it's going to fall down, so then I hang it upside down. Try to even that out while I zap it with my UV light and rotate it a little bit as I go. Definitely want to make sure you hit it for however long it suggests. I like to go at least 15 to 20 seconds on each side. Really cover it up, make sure it gives it that nice, hard, shiny body on the outside. And it does give it a nice look, a good shine. Mr. Pretty Tony, he'll catch your eye, but don't let him catch you slipping, or else he'll turn you out, especially if you're a trout. Well, that was the tie. I hope you enjoyed it. Until the next one, stay fly.